going to assume that it is a wonderful thing that when I went to reach for a bulletin, I found none. Isn't that wonderful? That either means I was standing at the wrong entrance, or we have a good number of people here today, and I can tell by looking out what a great crowd we have today. I'm so pleased. I'm curious, how many of you at some point in your life, maybe you felt as though the situation you were currently facing caused you to think, holy cow, this could be it. This could very well be how I die. Anybody? Several people? Yeah. I've had that happen twice. And the first one, probably no big surprise. The first one happened at the Marine Corps Recruit Depot in San Diego, California. And I just remember stepping off the plane and looking up at this mammoth of a Marine who was barking orders and turning redder by the moment. Now, the problem was, at the time, I was 17 years old. I had never been on an airplane before, and I couldn't get my ears to pop. So again, here's this mammoth of a Marine barking orders, steam pouring out of his ears, and I can't hear a thing he's saying. I'm standing there like a deer caught in the headlights, and he's getting meaner and angrier by the moment. Not only was I convinced that he was going to kill me, he was turning so red, I was convinced after he killed me, he was going to keel over of a heart attack, and we were both going to be lying there dead. But fortunately, neither of us died that day. But as I laid in my bunk later that night, music began to pour from the speakers outside the barracks. And what music did they play? What did they play every single night when it was time for us to go to sleep? They started playing taps. I heard that and I thought to myself, that's what they play when someone dies. It's the first day. Did somebody die already? In that moment, I had a thought that I would think 100 times a day for the next 13 weeks, and that thought was very simply, good God Almighty, what did I get myself into? I mean, I didn't know what else could I possibly do, so I began praying and pleading with God, saying, God, I don't want to die. Of course, that was inside. I didn't want the other Marines to see. Saying, God, I don't want to die. If you'll let me live, God, I promise, tell me if this sounds familiar, I promise, if you'll get me through this, I'll devote my life to you. I'll do whatever you want me to do, God. I'll make my life a life of purpose and significance. I'll devote my life to something greater than myself. God, just please, please, don't let my drill instructor kill me. Well, obviously, I made it through that night. I survived the boot camp experience, but that prayer, that God, I want you to use me in a significant way. God, I want my life to count for something greater than myself. God, I want to live a life of value and significance. That prayer is the same prayer that I have for all of you and all of you this morning. That your life would count, that you would live a life of true significance and eternal value. And I believe with all my heart this is a natural passion that we all share. After all, nobody wants to come to the end of their days and reflect back over the totality of their existence and find a lacking of significance. The older I get, the more true and the deeper that truth becomes. I've never met anyone who says, you know what, I've got a plan. Here's what I think. When I die, I want people to come to my funeral. I want them to gather around my dead body, and I want them to look at me, and I want them to say, dead, alive, what's the difference? He didn't do a whole lot of significance when he was alive anyway, so I mean, nobody sits down to write their life goals and they say, my life's ambition. Here's the top 4 of my life ambition. Number 4, I want people to say, he was a quitter. Anytime things got hard, he just threw in the towel and quit and snuck out the back. Number 3, not only that, he never accomplished anything remarkable. Absolutely nothing he did was worth remarking about. And number 2, because of number 4 and number 3, number 2 is he touched and helped absolutely 0 people. He had 0 impact, 0 kingdom impact. And of course, the number 1 goal, of course, is I want to be forgotten. I don't want anybody to remember me, not my son, not my daughters, not my coworkers, not my church. Just throw me in the grave, toss on some dirt, and move on with life. What do you say? Is that a great set of life goals and ambitions? You'll be glad to know no one is nodding their head yes. Now, here's a quote you've heard before, but is perfectly fitting for where we're at today. Life is not a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather to skid in broadside, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, loudly proclaiming, wow, what a ride. Isn't that great? Isn't that the kind of life that we all aspire to? I mean, we read that and we think, yes, that is the kind of life that I want to live. It's like suddenly we've recognized the fact that there are 2 lifelines to choose from. And holy cow, I'm in the wrong line. I'm getting out of this arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body line, and I'm marching over here to the skid in broadside, thoroughly used up, totally worn out. Wow, what a ride line. Oh, wait. I'm a Christian. I guess I better march back over here to the boring, mundane, upright, uptight line. And there we stand, taking one small step towards nothingness every now and then, thoroughly and completely convinced that this is where we belong. Isn't that horrible? Somewhere along the line, we've been lulled into believing that living a passionate, exciting, purposeful life and being a Christian, oh, no, sorry, back in line. Well, I hope you'll be encouraged, because it is my joy to announce, to declare to you that that kind of thinking is nonsense. In fact, Jesus declared, I came that you may have life in abundance to the full till it overflows. Friends, that's this line. That's the skid in broadside line. That's the wow, what a ride line. Who said being a Christian has to be some lackadaisical, half-hearted snooze fest? That's definitely not the picture God paints for us in His Word. Now, there's a challenge that lies therein. The challenge is, if we're going to enjoy life in abundance to the full until it overflows, you have got to march your booty out of this line and over to this line. And the understandable, completely understandable struggle for some is that you may be thinking, but Jeff, you don't really know the depth of my story. You don't know everything there is to know about me. You don't know the things that I've done, the people that I've hurt, the people that have hurt me so deeply that I'm embarrassed to even talk about it. And maybe somebody even feels like, you know what, I'm just disqualified. Because of this and that, I'm just disqualified. Maybe you're thinking, you know what? I gave up my right to choose a line a long, long time ago. I am where I am because of who I am, and that's it. I'm stuck right here. And if that's you, I really want to say with a smile on my face to all of you, there is still hope. Did you hear me? There is still hope. You still get to choose. Yes, you may have had a terrible past. Yes, you may have had a terribly painful past. But the fact is, your life story is still being written. They have not reached the last chapter yet. There is still breath in you, and as long as there is still breath in you, there is still hope for you. Jesus said, I came that you may have and enjoy life in abundance, to the full, till it's overflowing. So no, it's not too late. You're not disqualified. You still get to choose. But you cannot just choose. Once you choose, you have to take action. Choosing and then not moving is like going to the store, buying 5 gallons of paint, some rollers, some paintbrushes, the little container to roll the paint in, and you get all of that in and the tarps, and you put it in your living room, and that's it. It just sits there. And your neighbor comes over and he says, dude, you really need to paint this living room. It's horrible. And you go, I know. I agree. I got the paint right there. Yeah, but are you going to actually do the painting? Well, yeah, look, I even got the blue tape. Isn't that cool? But are you going to do the painting? Well, you know I should. I'm really convicted that I should. Would you pray for me that I would paint the living room? And eventually your friend's just going to get frustrated and walk out, right? So if you're going to seize your destiny, the destiny that God has specifically planned for you, you have to courageously step out in faith. And we see this so beautifully illustrated in the first chapter of Joshua. I love this chapter. And this dates me a little bit, I recognize, but for me, this is like the Rocky Balboa champion chapter of the Bible. Joshua is leading the Israelites to the promised land. They're getting ready to cross the Jordan River. They're preparing to seize their destiny. And 3 times in this one chapter, God says, be strong and courageous. Be strong and courageous. Be strong and courageous. He says it in verses 6, 7, and 9. Now, have you ever wondered why is God repeating himself over and over and over again? Why does God keep saying this phrase, be strong and courageous, to Joshua? Well, for one, Joshua was feeling neither. He was feeling neither strong nor courageous. Now, before we judge him too harshly, the truth is we would have been too. One of the reasons he was so intimidated is he was specifically intimidated by his predecessor. And believe me when I tell you, we would have been too. How would you like to succeed Moses himself? How would you like to be next in line as president and CEO of Israel Incorporated, right behind Moses? No way, right? So that's one of the reasons Joshua was so intimidated, and one of the reasons why God kept repeating that encouraging phrase, be strong and courageous. But the other reason God kept repeating himself then is the same reason God repeats himself today. God knows. And God wants you to know that seizing your destiny is not easy. Seizing your destiny is never going to be a walk in the park. In fact, seizing your destiny is a battle. It is a fight. You will always have to fight for your destiny. It's true for us. It was true for Joshua. Joshua had to fight for his destiny. Joshua knows in the land that they're preparing to take possession of, there are already 7 other nations living there. And all 7 of those other nations are larger than Israel, stronger than Israel. They have more highly trained, sophisticated military than Israel does. At this point in time, they don't really have a military at all. So understandably, he's a little scared. And because he's a little scared, God, in his infinite wisdom, gives him a little pep talk. He says, come here, son. Josh, take a knee. Take a knee. Listen up, son. Moses, God says, let me tell you, I want to tell you something you already know and something you've forgotten. Here's what you already know, son. Moses is dead. But you've forgotten. I'm not. God said, yes, Moses is dead, but I'm still alive. And I'm the same God who did all those amazing miracles through my servant Moses. I am the Lord your God who brought you up out of Egypt. I am the same God who rescued you from 400 years of slavery. I'm the same God who led you with a cloud by day and a fire by night. I'm the same God who provided manna in the desert, brought water out of a rock, parted the Red Sea, and swallowed up your enemy. I'm the same God who did all those amazing miracles through my servant Moses. And guess what, Josh? Guess what, son? I can do them through you too. If you will courageously step out in faith. The story doesn't end there. Because I believe with every ounce of my being, God is communicating that very same message to each and every one of us here today. He's still saying, I am. I am. I am the same God who rescued the nation of Israel from 400 years of oppressive slavery. I'm the same God who empowered the men and women to build this Methodist church. I'm the same God who did all those amazing miracles through my servants of the past. And Rochester, I can do them through you as well, if you will courageously step out in faith. Now, I trust that you'll be encouraged in knowing that Joshua eventually overcame his fear. Now, here's what's so amazing. Imagine the pressure and what we've already talked about. And not only did he have fear, something tells me back then there wasn't a lot of pharmacology. I don't imagine Joshua was able to go to CVS and get some Xanax to help him through the process, you know. And so to me, it's just incredible that God was so able to empower him to do what needed to be done, that he overcomes his fears and he steps out in faith and he successfully delivers over 1 million Israelites from one side of the Jordan to the other and on into the promised land. He was bold, brave, strong, and courageous. He lived a life of true significance. Now, again, it's very possible that someone listening to this is thinking that infamous 2-word question. So what? Right? So what does that have to do with me today in the year 2022? Boy, am I glad you asked. Here's how that story from thousands and thousands of years ago applies to your life, your situation today in 2022. The first step is always the scariest, right? The first step is always the scariest because you have no guarantee that there will even be a miracle. All you know is that God has said, I will be there for you. I will go before you. I will help you. I'm going to do my part. But son, daughter, you've got to do your part. You've got to be strong and courageous and take that first step. The first step is always the scariest. Now, I'm going to ask a question and let a few of you answer out loud. I expect some men to answer this question too, even though you won't want to. Is there anything you're scared of? Is there anything you're scared of? Other than every Sunday you worry about how long the pastor's sermon's going to be. Bats? Snakes? My wife? There's a healthy fear, yeah. All right. For me, snakes is one of mine as well. I don't understand how an animal can move that fast and not have any legs. It just freaks me out. Small, confined spaces. I get claustrophobia if it's too small. But you know what I'm scared of the most? I'm scared that when I get to heaven, God will show me two screens. And on one screen, He'll show me all the good things that I did for Him. And then on the other side, He'll show me all the things that I could have done if I had just been courageous and stepped out in faith. Something tells me this movie is going to take a lot longer than that one. See, the journey to seizing your destiny, the journey to getting out of this line and over into this line begins with the first step. Do you remember the story? Do you remember how the Israelites got from this side of the Jordan to the other side? You remember at the Red Sea, God just parted the Red Sea and they walked through on dry ground. Remember? But at the Jordan, God said, I'm going to shake things up a little bit. I don't always do the same thing the same way. God says, this time, I want you to get your feet wet. I want you to take the first step. You start walking through it first. You start walking through it first. Then I'll show up and do a miracle. And friends, that's exactly what happened. They stepped into the water, they took that first step, and the water miraculously stopped flowing, and they walked through on dry ground. They took the first step and trusted God with the rest. They took the first step, and they trusted God with the rest. So let me ask you, when you process this for yourself, not for your neighbor or not for anyone else, but when you process this just for you, what would you say your Jordan River is? What's that big thing, that big challenge that creates fear and intimidation in your heart that you know you've got to get through? You've got to get to the other side to reach your destiny. What is the Jordan River in your life? And what is the first step that you feel God calling you to take today? See, if God's calling you to take a step today, you dare not put it off till tomorrow. Because if you want to live a life of value, a life of significance, you have to make a decision, and then after you choose, you have to move. Choose and move. Just like Israel going to the promised land, you've got a choice. And it's a simple one. Which line do you want to be in? The arriving safely or the skid in broadside? You get to choose. Which side of the Jordan will you live on? The promised land side or the desert side? You get to choose. But again, don't just choose. Choose and move. Choose and move. Now, let me tell you one more story and we're done. I told you there was 2 times that I thought for sure I was going to die. The second time was I was 16 years old And it was the first time my dad let me drive the family car. It was a 1972 Ford LTD with like no suspension and horrible steering. So you kind of floated down the road like this, like a boat. And my friends and I were so excited and intimidated because Dad made it very clear, do not get a single scratch on my car, like he was a Cadillac or something. So my friends and I piled in the car, and we decided we're going to go to McDonald's. But you know, when you're a teenager, you don't just go from point A to point B. You go from point A to, around town 9 times, then to point B. So that's what we did. We cruised around town, and then we finally walk into McDonald's. But remember, we're teenagers. So we did not just walk into McDonald's. Oh, no. We strutted into McDonald's. That's right, ladies. I'm driving a car. How you doing? People were not nearly as impressed as I thought they would be. No one gasped. None of the guys came over and said, "So, what you driving, man?" Not one hot cheerleader came over, took me by the arm, and kissed me on the cheek as that one leg floated up into the air. Not one. So far, reality was not living up to my fantasy. The rest of the evening went pretty much like that until it was time to leave. We all go out and pile into my car again, and as I lean forward to start the car, I look up, and there are 2 hot cheerleaders walking by, and one of them looks me right in the eye and smiles from ear to ear. Travis, my friend, said she was smiling at me, but he's a liar. He wasn't. She was smiling at me, not him. But I got so lost in the beauty of her smile that I smashed right into the car parked next to me. I'm honest, I was petrified. There was this huge, massive dent in my dad's car, and I was the one that put it there. Dad was going to kill me twice. I contemplated fleeing to Mexico, but cooler heads prevailed. To make a very long story shorter, here I am sitting on the couch in the living room, convinced beyond all reasonable doubt that I am getting ready to meet Jesus way earlier than I ever expected. And what was worse? You know what was worse? I was guilty. I did it. It was my fault. I had the police report to prove it. My dad comes in and he sits down right across from me, and he just sits there for like an eternity, right? Just staring at me. I thought perhaps he was trying to figure out how to get rid of the body. But then he broke the silence and he said, "Are you okay, son?" "Yeah, I'm okay, Dad, I'm okay." I said, just waiting for the hammer to fall, right? And then he did the strangest thing. If you're a parent of a teenager, try this because it freaked me out. He looked at me and he smiled from ear to ear. And I thought, uh-oh, that can't be good. But it in fact was. He smiled from ear to ear with love. He stood up, and I stood up, and he gave me the biggest bear hug of my life. And as he was hugging me, he whispered into my ear, "It's okay, son. I forgive you. Just please be more careful next time." My father extended grace, unmerited favor, grace, not getting that which I clearly deserved. Grace, amazing grace. My father wrapped me in grace as he wrapped me in his arms. And your heavenly Father wants to do the exact same thing for you today. Right now. Regardless of how terrible your past may be, regardless of how terribly painful your past may have been, God is looking at you right now with eyes of grace, love, and compassion. And He desires to look at you as my Father did me and say, you are forgiven. By grace, you are forgiven. And I want you to sense and imagine Jesus Himself wrapping His loving arms around you and whispering into your ear, it's okay, son. It's okay, daughter. I forgive you. I love you, and I forgive you. I pray that this idea of grace, that grace may be the catalyst that empowers you to take the first and scariest step today. Let's watch this.
This is Noah. He's 500 years old. Not bad. He doesn't look a day over 350. One day, God told him it was going to rain. No, not rain. It was going to flood. No, I mean really flood. God told Noah he needed to build something that could rescue his entire family and 2 of every kind of animal on the earth. Let me see a football field. Okay, the ark was 1.5 times as long as that football field. You built that? Not bad. It took Noah and his 3 sons 100 years to build this boat. It's 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. That's almost 1.5 million cubic feet. That's the capacity of 522 railroad cars. In the 1920s, the Ringling Brothers Circus traveled with their entire operation, which included 335 horses, 26 elephants, and 16 camels, and they traveled in only 92 railroad cars. What I'm trying to say is, that's a big boat. Can you imagine starting with this and trying to get to that? Is it possible that following God means that we pursue crazy, big dreams that seem humanly impossible? That maybe you and I are called to do things that everybody else would think is crazy, things that when we begin, we can't imagine where they ultimately end. We don't have to complete the journey today, but we have to begin to take the first steps, to drive the first nail. We pick up the first board, step out on faith, and we begin to trust God for the rest.
Crazy, big dreams that seem humanly impossible. Like, oh, I don't know, selling the church that you've worshiped in for ages and moving over to a smaller place on the corner. And then after you get there, you think, well, why don't we buy the building next door too? What the heck? Because God's going to do big things. Might seem crazy to somebody else, right? But when you've got a God-sized vision and you're willing to step out in faith, anything's possible. And I just really want you to know that this is so true for your life, too. For your individual life and your individual struggles. This isn't just a big corporate thing. We're talking about the individual struggles that you yourself face. God is with you, and God will help you and provide for you. Just keep stepping out, and He'll keep supporting you and walking with you. As a way of reminding us just how much God loves us, we have the blessed opportunity to share together in Holy Communion, a way of remembering that God still declares to this